If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Once Saddam has nuclear weapons, the terror network will have nuclear weapons. Next thing you'll see is a nuclear bomb in the World Trade Center. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
We always say at the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that. You're going to have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people. I'm not the pig. You got to make a distinction. And the people are going to have to attack the pig. The people are going to have to stand up against the pig. That's what the Panthers are doing. That's what the Panthers are doing all over the world. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary.
Positive reverberations? Well, I know of at least almost 120 years of instability and conflict in the region. At least that's as far back as I went. Let's dig in. It's 1908. Oil is found in Khuzestan province, Iran, by British national William D'Arcy. 1909, Anglo-Persian Oil Company is established, and by the 1920s, Anglo-Persian Oil Company had secured exclusive rights to Iranian oil. 1933, Britain agreed to give Iran 16% of the profits of the oil reserves, but exploitation still ran rampant. Working conditions were horrific, wages were low, and the British never actually made good on promises to train Iranian workers to become leaders in producing their own oil. 1941, Britain forces Reza Shah to abdicate and replaces him with his son Mohammad Reza Pahlavi Shah. 1948, Iranian government invited the British to renegotiate their oil settlement, where the British currently held 80% of Iran's oil reserves. They simply asked for 50-50 profit sharing, which the British proceeded to label as astronomical, absurd, and greedy. That Iran would even dare to demand an equal share of their own natural resources. In response to this, there were strikes at the APOC, which became Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, at their oil plants in Iran, and then Prime Minister Haj Ali Razmara was assassinated in 1951, which led to calls for nationalization of the country's oil. The Shah had to honor Parliament's vote to appoint Mao Zedong in order to assuage the country's unrest. So, on April 28, 1951, Mohammad Mossadegh, secular socialist elected by Iran who nationalized oil, comes into power and immediately threatens Britain's control of Iran's oil. While back in Britain, they organized crippling oil embargoes against Iran. Mossadegh didn't capitulate to the embargoes, so they decided to retrieve their quote-unquote prize by toppling Mossadegh's government. October 1951, Mossadegh meets with President Truman at the request of the British to try and broker an agreement. Truman, however, would not get involved much more than suggesting that if Iran and Britain did come to an agreement, then the U.S. could help Iran weather their crisis. However, in January of 1952, Eisenhower was elected into office and he brought CIA chief Allen Dulles into power with him. Since this was during the Cold War, Britain suggested to Eisenhower that Iran was falling under Soviet influence due to Mossadegh being a communist. In 1953, Operation Ajax, which was performed by MI6 and CIA to stage a coup and overthrow Mossadegh, was with an initial $1 million being greenlit for the operation, which is equivalent to roughly $12.18 million in today's money. meaning $1 in 1953 is worth roughly 8 cents today. Disgusting. They found their way in with General Fazlallah Zahedi, who openly opposed Mao Zedong and had a strong hold of the Iranian military. The CIA provided decrees and articles written by them for the Shah to sign that would delegitimize Mao Zedong's government, but he refused to sign at first. However, when Mao Zedong discovered the CIA operation, he called for the dissolution of parliament due to all the political subterfuge. But that would give him significant power, even in relation to the Shah. So due to this threat to his own political power, the Shah then agreed to sign the decrees and articles provided by the CIA that would remove Mao Zedong from power. Mao Zedong refused, and his supporters overwhelmed the protest gangs paid for by the CIA that were in the streets. Zahedi went into hiding, coup leaders were arrested, and the Shah fled the country. Now, when this happened, the U.S. heard and told Operation Ajax commander Kermit Kim Roosevelt to abandon the operation. He, of course, ignored the telegram, and he filled the streets of Tehran with paid protesters to try and place Zahedi in office. He paraded Zahedi through the streets on a tank and had armed forces to stand up against Mao Zedong's supporters. About 300 people died in the streets that day, and within 9 hours of being told to abandon Operation Ajax, Roosevelt had revived the failed coup and forced Mao Zedong from office. Now, the Shah, a brutal US-backed dictator, returned, and he continued to rule for 26 years through his secret police force, Savak, and Iran becomes a puppet state. It is under this puppet Shah that Iran becomes the human rights violator that they've been accused of and are portrayed as in our Western media. He dismantled constitutional and democratic institutions, dissolved all opposition parties. He cracked down on hard-fought political rights and mass censorship of the press. This was Iran while backed and operated under U.S. rule via the Shah. However, in 1979, an Islamic revolution with the people choosing Khomeini, an exiled cleric promising independence and dignity, occurred. This is when the U.S. Embassy was stormed and hostages were taken. This is on November 4th of 1979. 3,000 Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 66 American hostages. 14 women and African Americans were released in early November of that year, as they had no issue with women or African Americans, just white male Americans. The remaining 52 hostages were held for 444 days until January 20th, 1981. The protest was in response to the U.S. allowing the deposed Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, to enter America for cancer treatments. As soon as Ronald Reagan was sworn in, the hostages were released. This was led and encouraged by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, who would later serve as the first supreme leader of Iran from 1979 until 1989. He was known for his support of the Iran hostage crisis, pursuing the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, and referring to the U.S. as Great Satan and Israel as Little Satan, although we might be able to flip those today. He believed strongly in Muslim unity and solidarity against Western and arrogant powers. But America would never forget the hostage situation and would impose sanctions against Iran afterwards that do continue up to today in 2026. Specifically, freezing of assets, restriction of trade, secondary sanctions against third-party entities for trading with Iran, and as of February 2026, Trump has imposed tariffs of up to 25% on countries that trade with Iran. Back to our timeline. September 1980, America arms Saddam Hussein for Iraq to invade Iran. Interesting. Khomeini was calling for Islamic revolutions across the Muslim world, including Iraq, who had a large Shia majority population. However, Hussein, a secular Sunni Arab nationalist, Ba'athist leader, wanted to take advantage of Iran's weakened military status to occupy Iran's oil-rich province of Khuzestan. Iraq attacked Iran in September of 1980, and the war went on until August of 1988. This only helped strengthen Khomeini's stature and support amongst Iranian people. Iran has a population and economy 3 times the size of Iraq's, but Iraq was backed by the Soviet bloc and Western countries, including the U.S., with them attempting a coup against Khomeini in 1982. By 1984, 2 million of Iran's most educated citizens had left the country, most likely due to the human wave attacks Iran was employing against Iraq, as well as Iran being Islamicized under Sharia law. Khomeini died of health reasons / heart attacks on June 3, 1989. He was replaced by Ali Khamenei, who was involved in the opposition of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and was a mainstream figure in the Iranian Revolution. He had multiple assassination attempts upon his life, mainly by Israel. Khamenei favored economic privatization of state-owned industries and, with oil and gas reserves, transformed Iran into an energy superpower. In his speeches, he regularly mentioned many familiar themes of the 1979 revolution, including justice, independence, self-sufficiency, Islamic government, and resolute opposition to Israel and the United States, while rarely mentioning other revolutionary ideals such as democracy and greater government transparency. Now, protesters were chanting, "Death to the dictator, death to Khamenei. This year is the year of blood. Khamenei will be overthrown." Multiple pictures and videos circulated on social media showing women lighting cigarettes with a burning picture of the supreme leader, which is illegal, and leading to a nationwide internet blackout / under the cover of the internet blackout. The death toll from the protests ranged anywhere from 3,117 to 36,500. He attributed the violence and chaos to external enemies, specifically the United States and Israel, accusing them of orchestrating the unrest and providing arms to demonstrators. These have been titled the 2026 Iran massacres. Khamenei condemned the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen and compared Saudi Arabia to Israel. Khamenei also condemned the persecution of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar and called Myanmar's de facto leader and Nobel Peace Prize laureate Aung San Suu Kyi a brutal woman. He condemned the United Arab Emirates as useless on several occasions. He established stronger ties with Russia, and with his assassination on February 28th of 2026, his son Mojtaba Khamenei will take his place. Now, General Wesley Clark, he was a commander-in-chief of U.S. Southern Command from 1996 to 1997, and then a NATO Supreme Allied Commander or Commander-in-Chief of U.S. European Command from 97 until 2000, when he retired as a 4-star general. While he was serving as an active duty member of the U.S. Army for 34 years, he commanded forces in the Vietnam War, served as District of Strategic Plans and Policy, and was the NATO Supreme Allied Commander of Europe. But he was quoted as saying that a senior official in the Pentagon, Joint Staff specifically, showed him a classified memo from 2021 that came from the Secretary of Defense's office. Now, he didn't speak, 2001. And he didn't speak about this until 2007 in an interview. And the quote was, "We're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq, and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off with Iran." Now let's go through that real quick and see, did we check off all the boxes? So Iraq, from March 20th of 2003 until May 1st of 2003, Operation Iraqi Freedom aimed to dismantle Saddam Hussein's regime, the same Saddam Hussein that they armed back in 1980, and eliminate alleged weapons of mass destruction. And although major combat operation concluded in early May 2003 and the government was rapidly removed from power, it was followed by a long multi-year insurgency and military occupation that didn't end until August of 2010, when President Obama declared the end of the operation and the combat mission, with the final U.S. troops withdrawing in December of 2011. Syria, September 22nd, 2014 until today, current, present. Although no formal invasion of Syria was announced in a conventional full-scale war, the U.S. did begin a sustained military intervention to supposedly counter ISIS on September 22nd, 2014, called Operation Inherent Resolve. Initial action was airstrikes with boots on the ground in 2015. The U.S. forces continue to operate in eastern Syria, primarily in oil-producing areas. Probably not a coincidence. And while not a conventional invasion to topple the government, they have been an active and ongoing presence in the country to this day. Lebanon. 1958, Operation Blue Bat. Eisenhower sent 14,000 military personnel to support the president against political and pro-Soviet communist threats during instability. 1982 to 1984, they had a Civil War intervention where the U.S. deployed Marines to oversee the withdrawal of PLO from Beirut and support the government. And then 2006, fighting with Hezbollah via Israel, the 2000s to present pretty much, the U.S. provides significant funding, training, and equipment to the LAF to bolster border security, counteract terrorism, and support stability. Libya, March 19th of 2011 to March 31st of 2011, the U.S. with a NATO-led coalition began Operation Odyssey Dawn to enforce a no-fly zone and protect civilians, which devolved into overthrowing Muammar al-Gaddafi's government. They had tried this back in 1986 under Operation El Dorado Canyon, but were unsuccessful. So even though the end of the operation was in 2011, NATO's continued their mission up until October of 2011. And since then, Libya has known no peace or stability. Somalia, first invaded on December 9th, 1992 to March of 1994, most known for the infamous Battle of Mogadishu in October of 1993, or the movie better known as Black Hawk Down. They targeted al-Shabaab and ISIS Somalia style through airstrikes, special operations raids, and drone strikes starting in 2007. Then began raids and airstrikes against al-Qaeda-linked militants in 2011. So up to today, the U.S. remains an active ongoing military presence in Somalia as well. Sudan had a 21-year civil war from 1983 to 2005 with tense relations to the U.S. The U.S. first backed the Khartoum government, but then later imposed sanctions against the same Khartoum government to pressure them to support the SPLA. In the most recent war that started in 2023 in Sudan, the U.S. has imposed sanctions on leaders of both the RSF and the SAF. And we've already went over the brief history the U.S. has with Iran. So it doesn't look like this list was incorrect. Maybe the time frame or timeline was a little off, but every single country on that list has been messed with in some way from the US or Israel or even both at the same time. My point being that Donald Rumsfeld was the US Secretary of Defense in 2001 when that memo would have came out, most likely right after 9/11, and they have carried out those plans. Unfortunately, these elite have enough politicians in their pockets that they're able to carry out these schemes over the span of decades and have different people in office and the mission still be accomplished. Whether it be through blackmail of a PDF trafficking ring or bribery or even assassination when you threaten the status quo of the mission, they will make sure they get it done. And what can we do to stop it? Shh. I say burn it all to the ground and depose them all. Let's take some pointers from our ancestors who committed the Haitian Revolution, Nat Turner's Rebellion, Stono Rebellion, German Coast Uprising, or even Igbo Landing, and tear this motherfucker down. But y'all not ready for that combo yet. So, in the meantime, in between time, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.